Hey there, Beck and Nick here. Welcome to the conversation. We're so grateful you're here.
We met through business and became best friends through a shared passion to help women earn more and give more.
We are the founders of Women, Wine and Wealth, have global businesses helping women, and are your hosts of The Spill.
The Spill connects you to real conversations for women, by women in a way you haven't heard before. So grab your wine and let's spill.
I have the pleasure to interview the beautiful Sandy, and so does Nicole. And we just wanted to kind of give you a bit of a background on who you're in the presence of and what greatness you all have access to. So Sandy Cantin, let's start. She is intentionally restless, resiliently heart open, a radical optimist, a side hustler, and not the kind of hustler you're thinking, a natural connector and people collector. She's writing her own script, and I love this. Her husband says she's like the Swiss Army knife of business because she gets called these things and more. And Sandy is definitely not the type to be boxed in or slapped on with a label. And just these are a few things that we actually love about Sandy the most. Over the last 30 years, she has experience working in sales and the coaching industry. She's worked alongside Mary Kay and the company, which is a $3.25 billion company. And most recently, she's been helping companies and leaders around the globe form their message to their audience and global stages. So ladies, please help me welcome the one and only Sandy Cantin.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you.
You say your career is a bit like the magical mystery tour, so please tell us more.
Okay, it's the magical mystery tour without the drugs, but it's because it really wasn't a straight path, you know, and maybe people listening can relate to this, but it was, there was lots of detours, dead ends, potholes, toll roads, and all kinds of things before I got to the highway. So when I left high school, I went to uni to study nursing. And, you know, when I started nursing, like lots of people, I had a big debt. So I got a side hustle. And what I found out was I didn't like nursing very much. And I was all about helping people. I liked that part of it, but I didn't like the being part of a union and getting paid what everybody else was paid when I didn't feel like they loved it as much as I did and put as much into it. And so I'll just kind of put a little hint out there that you can never see your path looking forward. You can only see it as you look back. So that was a clue for me, but I didn't know it at the time. So it was about that time I got seduced by the business world. And, you know, started some various corporate roles. And so I started off in the customer service world. I went to supervisor, and then I got into marketing communications. And then I left and went back to school and got a post-grad degree in training and development. So then I became a trainer. And then I went into business development and just kept getting more senior roles. But what I realized was I changed companies every 2 years. It felt like the only way I could get ahead. And I don't know if anybody listening feels like it's the same way, that when you're in an organization, it's just like you blend into the wallpaper after a while, and you can feel like you're the hardest worker and the most qualified, but you just get passed by. And so the way that I found to get ahead was change companies. And, you know, that worked for me. And, you know, and lots of times it wasn't because I didn't like it. It was because somebody else saw me in a bigger role and it wasn't happening where I was. And, you know, what I learned from that, and we'll get into this more, is that I was so naive. I just believed people would notice. They'd notice how hard I'd work. They noticed how everybody loved working with me. They noticed how I made things happen and got results. And the truth was, women especially need to be their own career advocates, because nobody's looking out for you. You really have to look out for yourself. And, there were times that I was more qualified, and I found that it was only through getting angry or feeling really hurt. It was all this emotion around being passed up for something. Having, someone you reported to bring in like their best friend, their best mate. The guys is who I'm talking about, because, they like to look out for their friends. But I was right there under their nose. And so I didn't realize for a long time that I needed to get outside help to learn how to manage my own career. So for 35 years, I kind of, kept changing and switching, and, found some great homes and some great women along the way. And women are so good at boosting each other. So that's why I say it's a bit of a magical mystery tour, because it was kind of all over the place. And only now, looking back, do I see some of the some of the connectors, or some of the things that were the same. And, when I was a nurse, I worked in maternity and gynecology. So I've always enjoyed working with women. I've always enjoyed helping women, lifting them up. I didn't love being paid the same as everyone else. So of course I'm not going to fit into certain things. And so looking back, it's kind of, it's pretty amazing. And you don't, like I say, realize it at the time. So, and I'm glad when I finally realized I needed help, because that's when things started to happen. But asking for help sometimes felt weak, or only people that were broken did things like that. So I thought I just had to figure it all out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think the first thing is, I think it's very cool that even 30 years ago that you were pivoting and changing and going, right, my time's up here, I need to move somewhere else. I don't think that would have been that common back in the day.
No,
it was people in your generation. It was like,
my parents thought I couldn't keep a job.
Yeah, because you start and you stick it back in that generation, right? You start it and you stick it for 20, 30, 40 years. So I love that you were just, at least, I think the first thing that I'm hearing is you were open to go, well, this isn't serving me anymore. I need to look elsewhere, without falling into the trap of, oh, but I've done so much here, what will I lose out of? And then what you've said there with, you got to the point where it's like, well, I need help. I need help. And I think, I've been in that position. I think we all have stories around what asking for help is. And mine was always, I don't want to be a burden. So I never seen it so much as weak. I would see it as, oh, I can't go up to them. Like, they don't know who I am. They're not going to have time for me. I don't want to be a burden on them. And so there's always a story around, what help do we need? And are we going to ask for it while we're not? But like, on that, there is so much help. Like, there's nearly this overwhelm of life coaches and business coaches, and, I can help you do X, Y, Z in this, this amount of time. There's a lot. What is the difference? And what have you seen on your journey between, there's role models, there is coaches, and there is mentors? Like, what's the difference, and how do you know which one you need at which point?
Okay, it's a great question. And believe me, I figured that out the hard way. And now I get to watch other people. And, women are so much more evolved now and figure things out faster. But one of the things that I had to, like I say, get over my own bias around was having a coach or a mentor was that you needed fixing, that you were broken and you needed fixing. So I had that, kind of mindset around it. And, let's talk about role models first, because that's easy, because they're everywhere, right? They're all around you, and they're people that you want to imitate. And it might not be imitate everything about them, but you see things in them that resonate with you, that draw you to them. And I've always been fortunate to have lots and lots of role models in my life. And, you know, we can talk about the beginning ones and how you work through the cycle. But so a role model is somebody you may not even know, you may not ever talk to them. But as you watch them and you listen to them, you go, oh, I'd like to be more like that. Oh, I like how she or he does that. And and it's as easy as that. And so the important thing about role models is just to be aware. What is it you like about them? Because as you're thinking about, you know, growing into a new kind of person, somebody that's more true to you, you have to really think about what do you admire about other people. So role models are a great place to start with that. And coaches come next. So, I mean, if we've all had a coach, I think, at some point in our life. As kids, we had sports coaches, we had teachers, we had, you know, teachers at school and teachers for dance. So coaching is more skill-based. And coaches can take you from here to there. And it might be in as little as 6 weeks, it might be 6 months. But they're about performance, and usually you kind of co-create what you're going to do with a coach. The coach has an expertise in a particular area, and you have a goal in that area. And so say you want to run in your first marathon, and so you get a running coach. And they're going to be able to take you from not running at all or being pretty spastic to, you know, actually completing a marathon. And so that's what coaches do. And if you think about Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game, he talks about a short game and a long game. So for me, coaching is more about the short game. And so when you get into a mentorship relationship, it's a longer game. It would last probably minimum of a year, but can last years. And it's more development driven than it is performance. To me, it's all about character, building your character. And so you can't microwave character. It takes time. If you want to become more truthful, if you want to be someone with integrity, if you want to be somebody that really is that, what they call a level 5 leader, you really need to be mentored to do that. And when I think about mentoring and coaching, like, let's just contrast the two of those. If there's an iceberg, 10% of it's above the water, right? And 90% of it is below. The 10% above is kind of the coaching piece. It's the piece that people see. The 90% below the water is the working on your character. And that's a big job. That takes time. And, it's really all about, how do you want people to see you? How do you want them to describe you? And so mentors just teach you how to think different. They often answer your question with a question, and it's a more free-flowing. A coach has a structured program usually, and a mentor might just say, what's on your mind today? Let's talk about it. Or you may just be able to set up an appointment ad hoc as you need them. But it's usually about working through a situation like, why do people cheat, Mary Kay? And you get this big answer, and you just have to learn to think about things differently. So that's the difference between the three as I see them.
I love that.
Does that make sense?
It does. Because I think when I listen to you, and this is, I think, what you have such a skill of doing, Sandy, is that it's such clarity. Because I'm like, I know that they're different, but if I had to sit down and kind of describe it, I'm not sure how I would. And you've summed it up so perfectly. And well, for me personally, I think I need all three for different reasons. And I don't know,
yes, and totally agree.
Yeah. And whether it's just where I'm at now, I need to tap into all three. Have I always needed all three? I don't know. But like you said, like, role models are all around, if we're aware of them. And sometimes they're positive ones and there's negative ones, right? So that's why the awareness of it is really, really. Yeah.
And, you know, to that point, Nick, I'm glad you brought it up, because as I think about my career in life, I've learned as much from the what not to do's as the to do's, right? Because, you know, if we think about, like, our very first role models were really our parents, right? Some people remember everything that their parents did wrong, right? But I think about my mom, for instance. So as a role model for me as a young person, my mom was so independent. My dad traveled for months at a time. My mom never drove. So she did all the work around the house. There weren't boy jobs and girl jobs at our house. When I went to visit friends and I'd hear their mom say, don't forget to take out the garbage, because that was the boy job and she didn't do that, but her job was the dishes. My mom did everything. She was on the ladder getting stuff out of the eaves trough. She was painting, you know, the rooms. She was standing on the dining room table, changing the light bulbs in the chandelier. So, and, you know, the downside of her strong independence was she never asked for help, ever, ever, ever. So, but, you know, I saw that in her, and I just, you know, obviously soaked it up, because I had a hard time asking for help. My dad, on the other hand, he taught me that I could be or do anything I wanted to. And he always had this thing about, don't let a boy beat you. He said, you know, boys and girls, they're the same. Not one's not better than the other, but don't you let a boy beat you. And he meant at school and all kinds of things. But if I can share a funny story, I always like to public speak. So it's year 6. And I won the school competition. I went on to the regionals and then on to the state. So, you know, I'm 12 years old and I'm, you know, in the auditorium that night, and it hasn't started yet, but I've got my yellow A-line dress on that my mother, Dorothy, made me. It's got a little daisy pin right here, and I'm feeling pretty shit hot, right? I'm surveying the room, and there's a couple of hundred people in it, and it's parents and it's judges and it's, you know, all kinds of people that are filling up the room, and I'm just feeling pretty good about myself. I'm going to speak that night on my older sister. So I get up and I do my thing. There's I think 12 contestants, and I was 3rd. So of course I have to sit through everybody after I go, and I'm feeling pretty good. Like, maybe I've got this, you know, I've got this. And then they introduce the last person, and his name is Stephen Ridgely. I remember it like it was yesterday. He had a suit and a tie, and it wasn't a school uniform. It was like a real suit and a tie. And how many 12-year-olds do you know that have that? And then when he opened his mouth and he said his topic was prejudice, I didn't even know what prejudice was. I'd never heard the word. I'm talking about my effing older sister, and he's talking about prejudice. Right? And he is owning that stage in that room. And I'm feeling smaller and smaller and smaller. I'm feeling like the country bumpkin. I'm feeling like I'm not smart enough to be in this place. And, you know, he came first and I came second, and I'm never supposed to lose out to a boy. And so that was the first time I decided that I needed to have help. Like, if I was going to compete in that arena, I needed to get help. And I just remember, and I mean, I don't know that I ever would have been pushed to that point had I not felt so insignificant and small. And I still came second, but I'd forgotten that, right? It was like, damn him. I want to be him. I want to talk like him. I want to own the stage like him. I want to deliver like him. And so that's when I realized that, yeah, I needed a coach.
Yeah. Amazing.
And then Mary Kay was my first mentor. And so I feel so blessed. I mean, books and things were my unofficial mentors along the way. You know, and even then, just going backwards and connecting the dots, when I think about the books I read, I mean, it was Nancy Drew mystery stories. It was Little Women. It was Anna Green Gables. Anne Frank. And then it was like, as I got older, it was autobiographies about women. Like, and still I started reading kind of self-help and self-development things, but everything is all for me about women and the things they have to go through to get where they get to, and all of that. So it's kind of fun as you look back at how you got where you are and all the people that have influenced you.
When and where were you aware of like what a role model, a coach, and a mentor was? Where, obviously Stephen Ridgely being your role model, but where were you in your life and at what time?
Wow, what a great question. I don't think I really started to understand until I worked with Mary Kay, because there were so many role models all around me all the time. And, you know, it was obviously a company for women, but these were women that were making incredible incomes, and they'd done a lot of work on themselves, which I didn't necessarily know about. But what I was soaking up was the fact that success comes in all shapes and sizes and all accents. It doesn't have just one, you know, model that it has to look like. And it was their speaking ability, but it was just, I was taking from it what I needed. So I hadn't caught on to coaches and things yet, like I say, because of my bias. And I think I really had to hurt enough before I understood coaches and mentors. John Maxwell always says some people only change when they hurt enough that they have to, or they know enough that they can. And I think for me, the impetus was hurting, being passed over for things. Yeah, you know, just feeling unfulfilled. Is this all there is? And, you know, all of those things that I think maybe a lot of women ask themselves. And I don't think I've really been aware of coaching or mentoring as far as paying for it, seeing the value in it, to actually pay for till I got around pretty evolved human beings. And I'll say it's been in the last 15 years, 11 of which I've been in Australia. And it's, when I think about the people that companies attract, and I just found that since being here, and, you know, again, I wasn't with the people I grew up with anymore. So I had to be different too. But that's when I got exposed to people who, when I listened to them, I thought, I want to be just like them. I want to be that interesting person. I want to be that one that is taking music lessons just because they want to. They're learning to play a guitar at, 45, or ride a horse or play the piano. I want to be that interesting person that has enough time and enough money to do all those things. And so when I got to know people and started asking questions, they told me their story, it was because they got coached on some things, but mentoring was the long game. So, if you listen to Simon Sinek, when he talks about short game, that's about winning. The long game is about staying in the game. And that's what people that I was exposed to, where they were interesting to be around, and they didn't care so much about winning once or twice even, but it was about winning for the long period. And it didn't mean they were the top or the best, but they just had a different attitude about things. They weren't working as hard anymore. They were putting in the hours, but they had more ease in their life, more freedom. And, they just didn't feel like they were always in a grind. And that's what I noticed. I started noticing they were different before I knew why it was. And so, in the last, corporate role that I had a front row seat to watch thousands of women, are not just women, thousands of people come in and to actually work with probably hundreds at a time. But I watched those that came in and just did, worked with what was free, thinking that they shouldn't have to pay for anything else. They worked with what was free, and that served them for a while. And I mean, depending on what kind of a company you're with and the resources, that could work. But what happened was when they hit a ceiling because they needed to learn something new and they weren't getting it where they were, they just said, oh, this isn't for me, or they quit, or they just kept trying more of what wasn't working. And that just led to frustration. And so then I watched people who would get some coaching. And I would see that they would start to, their posture would be different. They'd sound different. And it might be coaching, say, just around money mindset. And it helped them, if they were in debt, get out of debt. And it helped them to start knowing how to make their money work for them. So instead of having money just kind of flow through, even though they were working hard, they ended up, learning something. So they went from, kind of struggling to comfortable. This feels good. I can do this. And that's what coaching does, right? It will help you get to that next place. And so then you can get a new coach if you want and focus on something new. And then the ones that got coaching plus mentoring, they were these evolved human beings that I tell you about. They could talk about lots of things, not just what they do. They weren't defined by their title or their role or anything like that. They were just amazing people who attracted other amazing people. And, you listen to them talk. And they were big thinkers and they were world changers. And so instead of just thinking, how do I become the number one person in my organization? It'd be like, how can I play a bigger game? How can I, solve some of these world's problems? How can I help in my community? How can I help other women, raise up? And it just became so obvious to me. And I saw the value in it, where at one time I would have said, I can't afford a coach or a mentor. What I was really saying is I'm not worth it, right? That was my self-worth talking. And, what I realized was when I heard enough and I paid for some help, it felt so much better at the end. I felt like I really had transformed. I didn't feel like someone did it for me. I felt like I'd done the work and I'd transformed, and the value was huge. And, from working with so many women, what I've seen time and time again is when a woman wants something, she'll find a way to get it, right? And it can be a handbag, it can be a trip, it can be anything, but women can move mountains to get what they want. And the first time that I paid, I didn't really have the money. I really went out on a limb. And it's why I believe you have to have skin in the game, because I could not afford to lose that money I paid. I couldn't afford it. I didn't want to have to tell, my husband that I'd invested that and hadn't done anything with it. I didn't want to not be able to make it up, because staying the same has a price, too. Like just staying where you are when you're unfulfilled, unhappy, that has a big price too, on how you feel about you, how you show up as a mom, how you show up as a partner, how you show up at work. And so I just realized that I couldn't afford not to do some of these things. And I just happened to operate in an industry where it was all quite, common to do it. So that's what made the biggest difference for me. And today what I see is there's so much free content and people are just gobbling it up and doing nothing with it. And so I want to say two things about that. I was reading Seth the other day, and he talks about, like, even a blog post, it might take him 6 hours to write. And if somebody chooses to read it, it'll take them like 3 minutes to read it. And so there's an incredible amount of work that goes into creating content. And so to not do anything with it, that's just not fair. Like, don't consume if you're not going to use it. And when there's so much free, people start to say, oh, well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Well, they didn't do anything with it. It's not that it doesn't work. You didn't work. And so that skin in the game, to me, is what makes you committed. It holds you accountable. You're going to measure. You're going to want to see if you're making progress. And it just makes all the difference in the world. And for me, that was the turning point right there.
Yeah.
Is having skin in the game.
It's so true. Like, I just think of, and it could be anyone listening to this, but you can't want big change and not be prepared to make big change. Like, it's a very, and often we're in a world of like, I want, but my willingness is this big. My trust doing it is this big. And I remember, I don't know who said it, whether it was like Steve Jobs or someone, but I remember we used to share this with business owners to invest like in their business, in their coaching, in developing their team leaders. And when they said, oh, I don't know whether I really want to invest in them or me, it was always, well, what if I invest and they don't get better? What if I invest and they leave? What if I invest and it doesn't work? And then the opposite to that, which is what you're saying, is, well, what if you invest and they stay? What if you don't, and they stay? So what if you don't do anything different and they're still here? And I think we can flip that question to ourselves, like individual, like wherever you are on your journey right now. And I know a lot of women might be starting businesses, they might be in business, and you can ask that question. Yeah, of course. What if I invest and they're not the right coach for me? What if you don't, you're in the same position next year?
I just wanted to share a saying that I just remembered that was always so meaningful to me. And you can only do better when you know better. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's the reason right there, that you get a coach or a mentor, so you know better. And so, again, it's not that anybody's broken or they've reached their capacity. Like, that's it. You can't go any further. You just have to know more so you can do more and be more. So when it comes to role models, we've already talked about that. They're everywhere. And just notice what it is. Be aware of what it is that you're being drawn to. With coaches and mentors, I think that they have to be somebody, first of all, that you respect and that you think you can learn from. That's the first thing. And then there has to be a fit. And that fit is about, that you'd be willing to be vulnerable. You'd feel like you weren't being judged. You feel like they get you and what you're trying to do. And so I think that's the first thing. And, when I think about women, wine, and wealth, I look at how valuable this environment is because there's so many role models, including you two. And I love how you guys show up and discuss problems like over a glass of wine. And, anybody can hear you being vulnerable. But there's also people like Tracy and Grace. And so if you were thinking about doing some work with a Tracy or a Grace, you get to test drive them first in Women, Wine, and Wealth. They put a lot of free stuff in there. And if you consume it and do something with it, it's so valuable. But it gives you a little taste. The free stuff gives you a taste. And then both of them have programs that are not very costly or are a little bit more than a taste. I know you've got something special coming up with Tracy soon, and I won't blow what that is. I'll let you talk about it, but it may be like a pretty condensed version of doing something that can get you from here to here, something that you'll start to notice a change in how you think and behave. And Grace has programs like that as well. She's got her free content in your group. I'm doing a 21-day awareness course with her right now, and it costs me $33, so it's not a lot of money. I tell you, I am getting like $33,000 worth of value out of it because it's tools that you can use every day. I think we, you know, all have frustration in our life. We all want to receive more. So she's teaching tools that you don't just use once to get from here to here. Like every time that situation shows up, you've got the tool in your tool belt. So I think that between the free and the things that you can take for a test drive for a very small fee, you're going to know whether that person is a fit or not. And so to me, you know, fit is pretty important if you're going to bare your soul to someone and be, you know, putty in their hands. And so, but you can have that all, you know, you taste it all right here in WWW. And, you know, I like to put the wine first. I really think you should have called it Wine, Women, and Wealth, but that's okay.
Yeah, we may have to down the track. I do like that. It's a good point, Sandy. It's like, you do need to, of course there needs to be, because like you said, there was that, the books and the podcasts and all the free stuff is our first unintentional role model and mentor. But there's that taking that leap of that trust. Like if we really, and I think of that myself, if I'm not investing in someone, I actually feel uncomfortable. And the reason I've now felt uncomfortable is because for 6 years, I've always invested in someone for something, because I don't know all the answers. And if we really want to, we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. Like if we think of our goal or our business or our why or whatever it is, it's just this big puzzle and we do not have all the pieces. And it's like we have to go and find them. But my last question for you is this, because you mentioned it. We're in a world where there's so much free information to consume and mentorship or whatever it might be. And then really it's the skin in the game where the results are. That's where I've noticed it. It's like when I've got skin in the game, backs against the wall, I better do something with this. I do something with it. But can you ever be, how do you go from over consuming? Like, can you ever be fully baked in too much information or having too many mentors for too long? Or like, when do you know that it's like, oh, I'm delving into all of this, there's too much that I'm consuming, I'm not doing anything with it?
Well, there's the first sign if you're not moving the needle at all, right? And so, I mean, it's easy to see the gap and not the gain. So as you're being coached or mentored, you really have to measure the little bits of progress. Because think of all the times that you've been working on something, and it doesn't matter whether it's a business goal or a goal to run a marathon. Because it's hard and we want to give up. And what you find out is if you just stayed in it 2 minutes longer, you would have got your second wind and you could have finished that damn half marathon. If you just had more faith, if you just seen the baby steps and celebrated the baby steps, it would have kept you in the game. And so that's one of the pieces of coaching and mentoring that's so important, is to measure the progress. And they don't do the work for you. Like, you are doing all the work. Believe me, you're doing all the work. But, you're doing it in the environment that makes things happen. And if you have that belief, it will happen. And, it doesn't always happen as fast, right? We know that. Usually with a coaching program, it's been measured enough that they say, if I can get you from here to here in this amount of time. They've done that a lot. With mentoring, because it's that 90% below the water of the iceberg and its character. How can you say, I can teach you integrity in 6 months? You can't. And we can always be better people. So I don't think anybody ever reaches the point where they don't need a mentor, personally, because you just need somebody that gets you to think different, somebody that wants you to show up in a bigger way and can ask you questions. And what about this? What about this? What about this? So I don't think we're ever done growing. We're really human becomings, not human beings, right? And you can think you're fully baked and you can drown in too much information and content. So as soon as you're not making progress, if you're feeling overwhelmed, that's time to pause, take a breath, and really evaluate. And if you're working with a coach or a mentor, you can have that conversation with them. If you're just consuming free stuff, there's nobody to talk to, by the way, because they, you're just consuming and, holding yourself accountable. And we really, as humans, like to be accountable to other people more than just ourselves. So that's the other piece, right?
More than we think.
More than we think. We'll do a lot of things for our kids, for someone else than a teamie, a sister, somebody else than we will do for ourselves. So
love that, Sandy.
Sandy, you said at the start of the call, and it grabbed me, it was the first line when you spoke around the start of your career, and you said women are so good at boosting one another. And I have to say, I'm so grateful that you had that teaching at a young age, because you definitely have boosted myself. I can talk on behalf of myself, and I know a part of this group with Women, Wine and Wealth, but thank you for being able to boost us and whoever's watching, because it's truly amazing, and I'm just so grateful.
Well, and you know what? I feel the same way about you too. Like, you are role models and coaches and mentors to me. So I think, again, that's the beautiful thing about women, that they just do this naturally. And it's a good thing, because you can't get anywhere on your own. And so the sooner we learn that lesson, the farther we'll fly. So
amazing.
And of course, when you wash it all down with wine, it makes it even better. So
I was going to say, I think you said earlier something about women Beck and I, how we talk about problems and solving problems. Like, you can solve anything over a glass of wine and a girl chat. Anything.
Yep. That was just so important what you said, because women need to talk out loud. They don't necessarily need someone to solve their problem, although it helps to get new perspective and to think about it different. But really, it's the talking out loud that is so important. And so just having this community is really the first step. And then, the rest can come. But if this feels good, it probably means you're ready for more. So, and thank you for everything that you do in Wine, Women, and Wealth too. I love this bill. And, I love the mentors you brought in. And so it's really a spectacular place. Congratulations.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate and love everything you do, Sandy. Thank you, Beck.
Thank you. Thank you both. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.